since 2010, are you a member of Auroville?
Yeah, so I came there 15 years ago, and at first I was like, nah, I don't want to stay here.
Okay, so you visited them.
Inward looking.
Yeah.
And then I went to work in the rest of India for 7 years, and then 8 years ago I came back.
To Auroville.
To Auroville, yeah.
Cool. And then you became a resident. It took 1 year to get the residentship.
Generally, that's the process. Yeah. So you can come. Anybody who wants to join Auroville. Yeah. Here's my marketing pitch. You can come for 3 months as a volunteer, and then if you're serious, you can go back to your home country, get a special type of visa, and then you come for the rest of your life.
Wow.
But this 1 year that you're mentioning is kind of a probation period.
Yeah.
So maybe it's a year, maybe it's something. In our case, it was 2 or maybe more than 2 years. During that process, you are called a newcomer, and then you are vetted by the community. But it's also about you vetting the community. Like, do I really want to commit to this? Because it's a big jump. Once you really take the plunge. It kind of takes over your life, and it's a big decision.
Yeah, I try to quote the Auroville's website in the beginning, but do you have a one-liner how you can explain what Auroville is?
For the scene of startups, you could say it's an incubator.
Yeah.
You could say it's a maker space, a fab lab, and what we're trying to fabricate is a new humanity, a new species. So we're participating in our own evolution.
Wow.
And we are our own lab rats. We design the experiment and then we live it.
Yeah.
So we're working a lot on ourselves, both individually and collectively. On these systems. That it's one of the reasons why I came back to Auroville, is because I realized that the crux of the matter is there. We need to work on mindsets and paradigms and social design that kind of reproduces behavior that none of us individually want. It's an experimental city.
I looked up some of the videos what is already shared on YouTube and Vimeo, and they were talking about the collective and the individual, and for example related to the education about progressiveness or the static status. I think all of this should find some balance, because, for example, I was also thinking about that. That imagine 50 or 100 years ago, the craftsmanship they were reaching a certain level of development, and they were already happy if they could just hand it over at the same level how they learned in 30-40 years, and they were happy if they would able to conserve that knowledge. And they were, because of technology maybe, they were not even hoping to progress that much, but just to conserve. And then we are talking all the time about innovation technologically, but socially we are not innovating. So there is always a balance, should be fine. And do you see, because for me, how you presented Auroville, or the people who I met yesterday, or who I see on the videos, I see or I feel somehow similarities with the Wageningen community in general. Do you see any common characteristics of the people or the mindset in general, if you compare the two community, or the feelings that you had or have?
I think you can have various experiences in Wageningen. I chose to have quite a collective experience, so I always lived in spaces shared with many other people, where I like to cook together and do the dishes together and have a kind of this collective lifestyle. So that's very similar, and I think the connection with nature is also quite powerful in both. In Auroville, it's not necessarily by design, I believe. I think it's more by necessity. So people started planting trees 50 years ago because there was no shade and they couldn't do anything with the soil.
Yeah.
And then a forest, emerged, and right now a lot of it is thick jungle. And now we have all these lifestyles which are very, very green.
Yeah.
But philosophically speaking, there is a lot of anthropocentric thinking in Auroville. But I mean, same for Wageningen. I think right now the dominant paradigm in Wageningen with Louise Fresco, who used to be one of our teachers, it's not very deep ecology centric.
Yeah.
It's, I think, very anthropocentric and more of a control paradigm. I remember we had this, there was a teacher, Hans Scheere, and he taught us a lot about systems thinking, and his summary was that we need to shift from a control paradigm to a participation paradigm. And I think that's a very deep transformation. And actually, I don't know, I don't see it happening here, but I'm also not sure whether it's happening enough in Auroville. Otherwise, parallels, I don't know. I think there's a big difference in terms of the mandate. This is it's a city. We can't just overhaul the way that we do elections here in Wageningen and property. In Auroville, there's no private property. I don't think Wageningen would exist, and a lot of these buildings that we see around here, they're very mainstream property business models behind it, and returns on investment, and you sell and you buy and blah blah. I think it's a big difference.
This question was more about the community.
Right.
If you would compare the student community in Wageningen and some of the researchers and the Auroville community. But
I think on a superficial level probably, yes. Yeah, people like yoga and organic food.
Cool. So it started 50 years ago, and it was a wasteland. But what was there before? Like some farming company?
Before the wasteland, I don't know actually. I didn't do research on the longer term history. I just saw the pictures of 50 years ago, and there really wasn't a tree. And then the stories that people say that there was this one palm tree, and then from here you could see the ocean, and people would tie leaves around their feet because they had to run to the next shady spot, and otherwise they would burn their feet.
Wow.
So yes, and the soil is kind of a laterite, so if it gets compacted, it turns almost into stone. So it's true, when you have these tipping points, once you change the environment enough, then there's a kind of irreversible damage, which in this case proved to be not so irreversible, but it requires a lot of hard work. So they chipped holes and dug trees and watered them, and it took decades, but right now it's a forest.
So it is around 20 square kilometers, the site, and around 2,500 people live there. Around 1,000 Indians, and the rest are from 140, 150 nations from all over the world.
No, I don't think that much. I think it's about 50.
50?
Yeah.
Oh, it's okay. Okay. And you said that there is no ownership
Of fixed assets.
Yeah.
I mean, you can own
your T-shirt,
your T-shirt or your equipment.
Okay. And there is no money, or there is money? I was a bit confused. For example, do you get a salary?
So if I work for something related directly to the community, I will get what is called a maintenance. It's like a basic income, and part of that is in kind, and part of it is in cash. So there's definitely money. And I think the ultimate design or aim is not to be completely without money. It's just to not let money rule your thinking and your decisions. as they quote a lot of Sri Aurobindo, that's why it's called Auroville, after Sri Aurobindo, and he said that money should not be the sovereign lord. We're still working on ways how to reduce the influence of money and monetary thinking.
And just to keep it as a tool.
Yes.
But as I understood that Auroville is originally designed, or the site was designed to host up to 50,000 people, and economically it's a unit with its surrounding, so there is also cash flow in and out to Auroville. And would it be a reason to scale it up to 50,000 people, or is just one opinion? But what is your, as an entrepreneur who is working there?
Right. I don't know as an entrepreneur if I have an opinion, but as a resident, I think there can be a logic for different scales. I think different social innovations require different critical mass. For example, a healthcare system might work better with 10,000 people than with 2,000, because right now we have an issue if we have a few more elderly coming in and a few young people going out, then it quickly disrupts the balance. Whereas if you have a slightly bigger population, then you can be a bit more resilient. And similarly, in terms of all the jobs that need doing, right now we may have, 500, 600 really active adults, and it's just too much to handle. We need to manage all sectors, whether it is healthcare, education, food, governance, infrastructure, housing, culture, media, you name it. Everything needs to be managed and imagined, and to do that well and innovative and keep learning, you need manpower, you need a certain critical mass. And some things work better at a small scale, and some things work better at a medium and large scale. I think we're still learning about what is the appropriate scale for different types of social systems. Yes, it's a difficult question. I don't think that 50,000 is great for all purposes, but it's one of the reasons why people say 50,000 is because they also believe that urban problems right now are quite urgent in global society, and if you come with solution and you've scaled it up to like 5,000, then any town like Wageningen maybe is 20,000, they'll look at it and say, well, that's not relevant for me because I'm so big. Whereas if you have 50,000, then you can engage urban communities across the globe, and that might be very important.
It's interesting that you say that you highlight the characteristics of Auroville as an urban project, because I'm a bit skeptical about the urban development and the smart cities and all of these ideas. I see, maybe because just my rural development background, that it's like the cities are pretty much the ultimate platform of power and control. But maybe with the policy making, what happens in Auroville, it can be another way of governing cities.
I think 20 million is impossible. I just went to Tehran. I don't think you can have a sustainable city of 20 million people. But 50,000 is a different scale altogether.
So
it's not a city, it's a town.